Welcome back to the Mech Deck Tech. Today we have another custom build from Aetherdrift featuring Ketramose the New Dawn, an Orzhov Commander God 4/4. They have Menace, Lifelink, and Indestructible, and while they're always a creature, they cannot attack or block unless there are at least 7 cards in exile. Whenever one or more cards are put into exile during your turn, bam, draw a card, lose a life, right? We have a lot of value here, and that value train is going to lead us all the way to victory. So we basically have 2 things that we're looking to do with this deck, and they both involve exile. So the first, and to an extent the important side of things, is permanently exiling our opponent's nonsense, right? You have a threat in our way, get it out of here, exiled. The other side of it, right, is that we have a couple pretty decent ETB effects. So what are we looking to do with those? Well, we're looking to flicker them. I love the flicker mechanic. You've seen it in quite a few of my deck builds recently. It's definitely something that I'm kind of like focused on right now. It'll pass. But flickering does exile the creature, which is going to let us draw a card and lose a life, so there's still value to be had there on top of hitting those ETBs once again. So let's get started with these permanently exiled effects. We're actually going to start off with a little Planeswalker action. A little unusual for us, but we're going to start off with Kaya, Orzhov Usurper. So Kaya is a 3 loyalty, 3 cost Planeswalker with 3 abilities. Love these 3s here. So Kaya can get +1 to exile up to 2 cards from a single graveyard. If one of them happens to be a creature, we get to gain a little bit of life. Pretty happy with it. For -1, we can exile a target non-land permanent with mana value of 1 or less. So, you know, there are quite a few things that are cheap, that are just good targets for removal for that. Mainly here for that first ability. And then finally, she could ult at 5, right? That would require us to have done at least, a couple rounds of plussing her up, where she deals damage equal to the number of cards that a player owns in exile, gaining us that much life in the process. Abyssal Harvester follows up Kaya. So this is a 3-cost, 3/2. We could tap them down to exile a target creature card from a graveyard that was put there this turn and create a token copy of it. That token copy is a nightmare, and then any other nightmares we've already created with the Abyssal Harvester, gone. But that's okay. Athros Shroud Veiled follows that up. So we're jumping up in mana value here. This goes from a, little 3 guys up to a 6, but good effect, right? They're another god. They're a legendary enchantment creature, 4/7. They're indestructible. As long as our devotion is less than 7 between white and black, they're just not a creature. Beginning of our end step, we get to put a coin counter onto a creature. When that creature dies, we return it. We return it to our field. So, right, we could technically do it to our own creatures, and we probably will. That way, if they die for any reason, they do get exiled and they come back. We could also do it to steal our opponent's big things. We have options here. Boggart Trawler. So Boggart Trawler goes back down to 3 mana. We have a relatively low curve in the deck overall. So you're going to see a lot of these kind of like low to the ground boys. But this is a modal dual-face card, so we do have a land on the back. This is out of Modern Horizons 3. But it's a 3/1 for 3. Whenever it enters, we get to exile an entire graveyard, right? So once again, there's just value there. Depending on what type of decks we're coming up against, this would very quickly allow us to turn on our commander so they can attack and block and do all that jazz. But either way, we should get a little bit of value out of it whenever it ETBs. And with the flicker effects we'll get to later, we could kind of redo this, abuse it a little bit. Brain Stealer Dragon. So this is a 7-cost 6/6 flyer. Beginning of our end step, we get to exile the top card of each opponent's library. We can play them for as long as they remain exiled. We can spend mana of any color to cast those things, and whenever a non-land permanent that an opponent owns enters under our control, we're going to deal a little bit of damage based on the mana value of that card. So, is it expensive? Yes. Is the effect phenomenal? You betcha. Cemetery Reaper. So Cemetery Reaper is a zombie lord, which has some value here, not as much as in a zombie typal deck, but we could also pay 3, tap them down, exile a creature card from a graveyard, and create a 2/2 zombie, which with his boon will be effectively a 3/3. Dauthi Void Walker. Dauthi Void Walker is a 2-cost 3/2 with Shadow, making it pretty difficult for most of our opponents to block. If a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, instead it gets exiled with a Void counter. And we could eventually sack Dauthi and go ahead and cast some of those things. Emperor of Bones. So Emperor of Bones is phenomenal, right? This is a 2/2 for 2. Beginning of combat on our turn, we get to exile a target card from a graveyard. So, really good way of just having repeated exile effects for us. We could pay 1 to black to adapt 2, giving them a little bit of +1/+1 counter synergy. And whatever any +1/+1 counters are put on them, we do get to basically rip something out of exile that was exiled with the Emperor of Bones, and it comes in with a finality counter. It gets sacked at the end step. But, you know, 1 turn is often all you need with a thing. We don't have a ton of other +1/+1 counter support, but we also have the option of flickering the Emperor of Bones, right? Making it so they won't have any counters on them. We could readapt, you know, versatility. That's what we're here for. Gisa Glorious Resurrector. This is a 4-cost 4/4. If an opponent's creature would die, it is exiled instead. Beginning of our upkeep, we get to put all creatures exiled with him onto the battlefield. They are decayed, so whenever they attack, they will die, but that's okay. Gonti, Lord of Luxury, follows up Gisa. So this is a 4-cost 2/3 with Death Touch. Now, whenever they enter the battlefield, we get to look at the top 4 cards of an opponent's library, steal one of them in exile, and we can cast it for as long as it remains exiled. So, again, just a nice kind of cheeky ETB effect for us that we could abuse with the Flicker we're going to get to later. Steal cards, exile shenanigans. It's all a good time. Liza, Forgotten Archangel. So this is a 5-cost 4/5 flying lifelinker. Right, we're definitely using life as a resource in this deck. So all the lifelink we have between our various creatures really comes in handy. Now, whenever another non-token creature we control dies, we get to return it back to our hand, meaning we're going to be able to recast them. Another way of really abusing all of our ETB effects. But if an opponent's creature would die, it gets exiled instead. Right? Just a phenomenal way of being like, hey, you guys don't get to have graveyards. We're never going to need our graveyard. We're just constantly recurring everything. Lion Sash follows up Lisa. So this is a 1/1 artifact creature for 2 mana. For a single white, no tapping required. We could exile a card from a graveyard. If it was a permanent, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on the Sash. We could reconfigure the Sash onto a creature, and the equipped creature will get +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter already on the Sash. So a good way of making any of our big evasive guys kind of super beefy, and just a super cheap outlet for exiling cards. Nashi, Moon Sage's Scion follows them up. This is a 3/2 with Ninjutsu for 3 mana. The Ninjutsu cost is 4, but either way, it's a good time. The Ninjutsu actually does allow us to kind of abuse ETB effects once again. You get something with that has a good ETB effect that's also evasive. You Ninjutsu out Nashi. We could redo the ETB effect, and also we get Nashi's effect, which is that whenever it deals combat damage, we're going to exile the top card of each player's library, and we can play them until end of turn, spending mana of any color to do so. Senu, Keen-Eyed Protector. So this is a 2/1 flying vigilant bird scout. So we could tap them down and exile them to gain 2 life and scry 2, which is pretty decent. Whenever a legendary creature we control's attacks and isn't blocked, Senu, if they're exiled, gets brought back onto the battlefield, already attacking. So it's phenomenal, right? This is a way for us to really abuse the flicker, not the flicker nature, but the exile effect to basically be like, yeah, every turn I'm basically going to exile Senu. I'm going to bring them back as I attack with some legendary creatures. It's a good time. Skyclave Apparition. This is a 2/2 for 3 mana. Whenever they enter, we do get to exile a non-land, non-token permanent with mana value 4 or less. Whenever a Skyclave leaves the field, whoever we exiled that thing from will get a spirit. That spirit's power and toughness are based on the mana value of whatever we exiled. Moving out of our creature-based exiles and down into some spell slinging, we have Exercise. This is out of Duskmourn. It is 1 and a white. We get to exile a target artifact, enchantment, or creature with power 4 or greater. So, nice and versatile. I feel like often enough people don't have enough enchantment removal, and this is a nice sort of flexible piece for that. Farewell. You knew it was going to be in here, right? We're exiling all artifacts, creatures, enchantments, graveyards. We get to choose 1 or more, so super flexible once again, letting us determine if we want to keep our creatures in the field. But either way, it should allow us to kind of quickly jump up in terms of the number of cards exiled, turning on our commander. In a very similar vein, we have Merciless Eviction, so 6 cost sorcery. Again, we get to only choose 1 here, so, not quite as powerful, but still good, right? We can target creatures, artifacts, enchantments, or planeswalkers, but either way, it's a good time. Moving down into some speedier spells, we have Abstruse Appropriation. Try saying that 10 times fast, but that is a 4-cost instant with the void, so it has no color. We can exile target non-land permanent. You can cast that card as long as it remains exiled, and spend mana of any color to cast it. Anguished Unmaking follows that up, where we exile a target non-land permanent at the cost of 3 life and 3 mana. Baleful Mastery is up next. This is a 4-cost, though it could be done for as little as 1 in a black, allowing an opponent to draw a card. But it just exiles a target creature or planeswalker. Both are good. As is the Spark. You knew it was going to be in here. So 2 mana, exile a target permanent with mana value 4 or greater. Path to Exile, as well as Swords to Plowshares, are in here. They are kind of commander staples and do extra work in this deck in particular that cares about exiling things. Return to Dust. So 4 mana, exiles an artifact or enchantment. If we cast it during our main phase, we get an extra target. And again, getting rid of mana rocks is always nice, right? We're slowing down our opponents. Getting rid of powerful enchantments, right? Most decks that I've seen don't have a ton of enchantment removal, and this is just another way of doing it. Utter End. So 4 mana, exiles any non-land permanent, and Vanishing Verse will get rid of any monocolored permanent. Notably, lands don't have color, so basically still non-land. Let's jump down into our artifacts. That's right, we're not done exiling things. I told you, this deck is all about the exile. We're going to start off with Ghost Vacuum. So Ghost Vacuum is an artifact for a colorless. We get to tap it down to exile a card from a graveyard. We could also pay 6 and tap it down to sacrifice the Ghost Vacuum and put each creature card exiled with it onto the battlefield under our control. Now, each of them are just 1/1 spirits, and we can only do that at sorcery speed, but, repeatable graveyard exiling is good for us. Relic of Progenitus. So Relic of Progenitus is another 1-cost artifact, nice and cheap for us. We could tap it down and have a player exile a card of their choice from their own graveyard, or we could pay 1 and exile it to exile all cards from all graveyards and then draw a card. So another really easy way of basically being like, hey, I need my number of exiled cards to go up. let's just like sack this. We paid effectively 2 mana, exiled all graveyards entirely, and probably honestly ruined someone's day. Tormod's Crypt. So Tormod's Crypt is a 0-cost artifact, which we could tap and sack to exile all cards from a specific graveyard. So again, just a very easy way. We could even just like hold this in hand for a while because it doesn't, cost us anything to play. It doesn't cost us anything to activate. And just be like, hey, that's gone. Unlicensed Hearse. So Unlicensed Hearse is a vehicle. So we could pay 2 to get it out. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards exiled with it. It has a crew of 2, and we can tap it down to exile up to 2 cards from a single graveyard. And we're still not done, because we do in fact have a little bit of fun to be had with Cunning Rhetoric. So whenever an opponent attacks you and or one or more planeswalkers you control, we get to exile the top card of that player's library, and we get to basically cast it for as long as it remains exiled, and spend mana, of any type. It's a good time. Last, but certainly not least, is Leyline of the Void. So Leyline of the Void, if it's in our opening hand, we get it out for free, but it does normally cost 4. If a card will be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, it is exiled instead. Now this will lead us into our flicker effects, right? Brought it up earlier. We're trying to make it so our opponents don't ever get to have a graveyard, and things that would, help us do that can be flickered and kind of abused in different ways. So starting off, we have a Teleportation Circle. Teleportation Circle is great. I love it. It's 4 mana, flickers a creature at your end step. It's a good time. It is pushing our budget limit, which is $10 per card, but it manages to squeak under that line. Far Traveler. So commanders we control have, at the beginning of our end step, we get to exile a target creature that is tapped and return it to the battlefield. So again, abusing any kind of ETB effects, and also giving creatures a kind of like pseudo-vigilance. Conjurer's Closet, basically a colorless version of Teleportation Circle. Beginning of our end step, we get to flicker a creature. It's a good time. Parting Gust. So Parting Gust, I could have included in the first section, I could have included here. It's kind of a bit of both, right? Because Parting Gust has an instant for 2 white. We could gift a tapped fish. So we're going to exile a non-token creature. If a gift wasn't promised, it comes back with a +1/+1 counter at the beginning of the next end step. Meaning if we do promise a gift, we just get to get rid of a non-token creature. So it's both. It's either or. It's really up to us how we want to use it. We're also running Ephemerate. So Ephemerate lets us exile a target creature and have it come back, and it also has Rebound. Moving on from that, we are running Cloud Shift. So Cloud Shift is a single white mana, as was Ephemerate, and it just flickers a creature real quick at instant speed. It's phenomenal. We love it. Restoration Angel. So Restoration Angel is a flashable flying 3/4 for 4 mana. Whenever it ETBs, we're going to go ahead and flicker a boy. Philia, Exuberant Shepherd, another flashable creature. They are a 2/2. Whenever they attack, we get to exile a creature at the beginning of the next end step and return it. Bam, a little bigger. Felidar Guardian is my classic flicker boy. 4 mana, 1/4, ETB, flicker a creature. Last of our flickery boys is the Charming Prince. So a 2/2 that whenever they enter, we have a couple different abilities we could use. We could scry 2, little card selection. We can gain 3 life. I'll take life gain. Or we could slow flicker a guy, meaning they're going to come back at the end step, but, that means we'll still be able to abuse their ETB effects. Now, with all those exiles and flickerings out of the way, we do have a few honorable mentions among them that don't do those effects, but kind of help us to drain our opponents, even though we've already been clearing their board, right? We've been running in, hitting for damage with our menacey, life-linking commander, keeping ourselves out of, harm's way. We want to get a little bit of drain action going on here. So, Corpse Knight. Corpse Knight is phenomenal. This is a 2/3 for 2. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, each opponent will lose 1 life. So, 2 of our flicker creatures plus the Corpse Knight literally just wins on the spot. We flicker back and forth rapidly, draining the table. Gray Merchant of Asphodel, also known as Gary. Whenever they enter, right, each opponent will lose X, and we're going to gain X, where X is our Devotion to Black. Devotion to Black in this deck could be pretty high. And, really just a good way for us to be like, hey, lose a bunch of life. I'm going to flicker him. Lose more life. Flicker him. Lose even more life. Get out of here. Speaking of honorable mentions, we do have just a few more that were honestly a little too expensive. Right, they're over the $10 limit, but would have made fine additions. And we're going to start off with the Opposition Agent. So Opposition Agent is a $2 card, far too expensive. But for 3 mana, you have a flashable human rogue. Whenever an opponent goes to search their deck for anything, we get to control that search. While an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find, and you could play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. It's just super nasty. But way over budget for us. Solitude. So Solitude is a 3/2 flashable lifelinker for 5. Whenever they enter the battlefield, we get to exile up to 1 other creature, and that creature's controller will gain life equal to its power. We could also evoke it out for just exiling a white card from our own hand. So value to be had there. Unfortunately, another card that's sitting at the $20-ish mark. Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So Agatha's Soul Cauldron is a 2-cost legendary artifact. That's $40. So way over budget. But we can spend mana or any color to activate our activated abilities for creatures. Don't really care about that side as much. Creatures we control with +1/+1 counters on them have all the activated abilities of things exiled by Agatha's Soul Cauldron. And we can tap it down to exile a target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature, we have to put a +1/+1 counter on one of our own creatures. So again, a nice source of repeated exile. Unfortunately, the card is stupid expensive. And last of our honorable mentions is the Currency Converter, also around the $20-ish mark. So just a little too expensive to tell people to run out and buy. But for 1 mana, you get an artifact. Whenever you discard a card, you can put that card into exile from your graveyard. So already pretty decent, right? We don't have a ton of exile effects natively in the deck, but luckily the Currency Converter is a discard outlet. So for 2 and tapping it down, we get to draw a card and discard a card. And for just tapping it down, we can put a card that we have exiled with Currency Converter into our graveyard, and based on what it is, it does different things. So if it's a land, we get a treasure. If it's a non-land, we get a rogue. I honestly don't even know that I care that much about the second effect. The second tap down, rather. Definitely here for the fact that we could discard cards and force them into exile. But guys, that is the deck. As always, they are budgets, so no card over $10 is in the deck. Are there cards that you felt like I'm missing? Cards that I put in that you're questioning the value that they're really adding to the deck? Definitely let me know in the comments section down below. But as always, I am Mechanized Minion, and these episodes are brought to you by our sponsor, Arcane Fortress, makers of fine TCG accessories, including deck boxes, sleeves, binders, playmats, and more. There is a link in the description which will earn you 5% off your purchase, as well as help to support the channel. Of course, you never have to spend any of your money to support this channel. You could just like, comment, subscribe, share the video with friends, watch the playlists in the background. It's all good. But until next time, good luck with your builds.